Welcome everyone to the Driving Change in Construction Industry panel. We've got a great group here, and I think we're going to have a really neat discussion. Before I introduce the panel, I want to remind everyone you can ask questions in the Q&A field, and I'll keep an eye on that and try to get those in as we go along. But do be patient, because we could have some long discussions here. First off, today we're joined by Marg Latham of Aqua Libra Consulting. Marg is a professional engineer and certified management consultant running her own practice since 2010. Before that, she spent 20 years managing institutional, residential, and infrastructure projects in Toronto, Winnipeg, and Vancouver. In 2001, she won an Outstanding Women in Construction Award from the Vancouver Regional Construction Association and Canadian Construction Women. And she chairs the board of the Canadian Centre for Women in Science, Engineering, Trades, and Technology. Hi, Marg.
Hi, Patrick. Thank you for introducing me. Glad to be here.
Okay, thanks. Next up, we have Stephanie Rhoda from Carmelin Design Build. Stephanie is a second-generation co-owner of a renovation and custom home building contractor in Toronto. She has experience in real estate development, and she's got an MBA from the Schulich School of Business. Stephanie is a contributing columnist for Canadian Contractor magazine when she gets around to writing one. And she is on the Bid Renovator Executive Council. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi there.
Next, we have Natalie Leonard from Passive Design Solutions. Natalie is a civil engineer from Halifax and was Canada's first certified passive house consultant and builder. She's completed more than 100 net zero and passive house projects since. How you doing, Natalie?
Great to be here. Thank you, Patrick.
All right, I'm going to throw my questions over here to the side so I'm not obscuring your beautiful faces. And here we go to let's just go around the table and I guess, given your own words, a little introduction of yourself and what you're working on these days, I guess, in addition to what I've already covered. Marg, let's start with you.
Hi. Well, in my own business, I do a lot of work in professional practice, doing work for the regulator in BC because corporate regulation of engineering firms is coming in this year. I'm also helping some major public sector organizations go through the process of getting ready for corporate regulation because they will get folded in under that as well. And on my volunteer side, a lot going on with WinSet Centre, which is Canadian Centre for Women in Science, Engineering, Trades, and Technology. Obviously, we have, like many organizations, we're out there, looking to get funding for projects, but we're also delivering skill builders for leadership skills for women in set sector.
Fantastic. And Stephanie, over to you.
So just to follow up more on your introduction, Patrick, I run a custom home business alongside my brother. It was started by our father over 30 years ago. And I must say, I never intended to get into this field. It was something that kind of naturally evolved. And I have a business background. And when I was doing my MBA, I had an opportunity to have a focus in real estate development. And from there, I got employment with a boutique condo developer. And then when I had left for maternity leave, my brother said, you know what, it would be great if you joined the family business, and I've never looked back.
Awesome. Natalie, what's keeping you busy these days?
Hey, Patrick, we've kind of transitioned from being a design build firm specializing in passive house, and for many people who wouldn't know what a passive house is, it's a high efficiency building standard that started in Germany and is gaining some traction here in North America. The best way to describe it is we can build a single family house that you can heat with a couple hair dryers on the coldest night of the year. So that level of efficiency. We have a small team of 10, and now we do mostly design work, but we have do a lot of construction training and support. So rather than trying to build everything ourselves, we've now partnered with other builders to execute this level of efficiency in construction. One of the projects that we're super excited about right now is called the Sunflower Development, and it's a development for Addison House, which is a not-for-profit that builds affordable housing for women at risk, women and children at risk. So we're pretty excited to be doing the design work and the construction support on a project of 25 units that will be net zero, meaning they make as much energy as they use in a year. So we're pretty excited about being part of that project right now.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. You're in a neat field there for sure. I think passive house is going to be a big thing going forward as all the energy codes keep tightening. Maybe we'll get into that more later. Mark, I want to start out with you because at least in your previous background, you know, you did some of the rising up that I guess you would call the corporate ladder inside the construction industry. Went on to progressively more responsible positions with some of the larger organizations. And tell me a little bit about glass ceilings, about your experience, I guess, moving from position to position, and whether you felt like as a woman, what was that experience like? Were there challenges there?
Certainly, certainly there are challenges along the way. I consider myself very fortunate that very early on in my career with a company no longer out there in the marketplace, got bought up, called UMA Group, where I worked for a gentleman who became a mentor, a sponsor, and that certainly helped me advance in my career within that organization and go up through the ladder. And I think I can't say enough about how important that is for women to find allies, mentors, sponsors. The rest of the world was not as ready for having a woman move up through the ladder, and particularly when I moved into an executive role in the company. I was the first woman to be a vice president in that organization, and it's amazing how men can make mistakes, but women don't get that same, the same opportunity without having it be a significant issue. And I think sometimes you feel when you're a woman and you're advancing and you're the only one there, you're carrying the whole weight of your gender on your shoulders. I can't say enough about how important it is for those allies and sponsors to be there for you in your workplace.
Yeah. Stephanie, it sounds like you had a strong advocate in your brother in getting involved in the business. What did your father think?
Oh, he loved it. He was actually such a supporter, and I have to say that that's something that is a huge takeaway for me now as a parent as well, is to really foster whatever passion your children have, even if it's different from your vision. But I always had such incredible supportive parents, and I think that definitely is what you would need, especially if you're a female entering, like we've discussed, a historically male-dominated industry. Having that support, or like Mark said, a mentor is, I think, extremely helpful and encouraging.
I bet. Yeah. Natalie, you know, you're out there, well, it's a semi-new way of building. You're out there promoting a new way of engineering and making buildings. What that entails, I think, is going to a lot of people and men who feel very confident about knowing what they're doing and telling them how to do things differently. Why don't you talk a little bit about that to me and what that experience has been like?
Yeah, it's true. We're trying to change the way things are built, and sometimes it's hard enough to manage just the same old way of building. And for me, I'm quite fortunate in that I grew up in a family where there wasn't a lot of gender roles. You know, we had to paint houses, and my father was a general contractor as well. So we had to kind of do everything. You know, cut the grass and paint the houses pitch in regardless of whether it was my sister or my brother or I. So I grew up with a fairly strong can-do attitude, and sometimes I think I can do things that I really can't, but it makes me go out and try and not realize what I don't know. And it's for me, there's some real I think that really helps, just being confident and knowing your knowledge. And you know, one of the things I really notice is women are always apologizing for their mistakes or how things are going. And if you watch, men just don't do that. They're like, well, that didn't work, now we're doing this. And so I try to kind of emulate that a little bit, to just say, okay, what's the solution? We're moving on, and how do we do these things? And it's actually quite fun for me. I'll go to a job site and we do some things really differently in how things are built. And you know, there's a bunch of older guys standing around with their arms crossed and a great big truckload of, you know, EPS insulation sitting on the site, and you know, they're really reluctant. And then by lunchtime, they're calling their friends saying, you should get over here and see what we're doing. It's really cool. And then I think, okay, we got them converted. So yeah, so just knowing it. And the other part for me has always been to be really hands-on. You know, wear my grubby gear and get out the spray foam gun or the knife or whatever's going on, and actually be hands-on in the teaching. Seems to help build some cred on the job sites.
Yeah, that'll attract some respect for sure, I don't doubt. Absolutely. Moving on a little bit, Stephanie, one of the things that you and I have talked about offline was you're running a company. You were mentioning that your husband has been having to travel to Vancouver quite a bit just recently, and that leaves you in the position of chasing the kids around the house and trying to get it all done at the same time. You know, just a recurring theme. It came across in my nominations that for the videos that we did. You know, this is just a constant challenge for women, I think, in workforces everywhere, and really in construction, and really when you're trying to run your own business in construction. Why don't you tell us a bit about how you've coped with that and been able to, you know, work out all those challenges?
Well, I'm still figuring out how to cope with it, to be honest. But I think that the biggest realization that I've come to is it's okay to be imperfect. It's okay not to, you know, meet your own expectation on a daily basis. You can't, because you're being pulled in so many directions, from, you know, your work, your obligations, to your children. And you know, that I think for me was the biggest hurdle to overcome, is just trying to find a bit of that balance and accepting that it's okay if it's not always perfect. I think when you have your own business, you know, you work really hard and you never get an opportunity to actually turn it off. You're still, you know, replying to emails at 9 o'clock at night after the kids go to bed, or, you know, when you have a free moment on the weekend, you try to catch up on the week's work. So yeah, it's an ongoing process of continuously improving.
That's interesting, because it goes to Natalie's point about, you know, that the pressure, I guess, some women feel to apologize, to be perfect, to try to, you know, not ever make a mistake. Yeah, you know, being a man means never having to say you're sorry. I mean, you know, you just, you know, that isn't really part of the environment. Mark, do you think women face special pressure when they're trying to balance all of these conflicting demands that maybe guys don't get?
Absolutely. I do believe that is the case. And especially now in the pandemic, I mean, who are the caregivers? Who are the homeschoolers? Who are looking after the home? Who are trying to work remotely? A lot of women in this industry, as well as other industries. And there's a World Bank report that's just getting some press that's saying that we're losing a lot of women in the workforce because they're having to make the tough choice. They work for, you know, a decade or two on their career, but the choice is, do I continue that or do I support my family at home? And I think we risk losing the progress we've made in construction industry over the last couple of decades. So it really is a lot of pressure on women, and it is different for men. It always has been, as I think you know. You can have a family, you can, and someone's back there looking after them, if you know, at least over the historically for you know, for men in industry.
Yeah, it's a whole set of expectations, isn't it? I mean, the men are, you know, told, well, you know, work is number one. It's the only thing, and that's all you have to worry about, right? And I think women often get a different message. Natalie, what have you seen as far as balancing? I guess that work-life balance. You know, it's just something. Have you seen it be a drag on women's careers? Is it something that, you know, you look at women maybe you've known in your career and gone, gee, they could have really gone farther maybe, but they, you know, they had to make those difficult choices?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I do, but I'm starting to see maybe an optimistic trend in the other direction. 3 of my male staff took paternity leave because their wives made more money. And so I think you know, that stat you gave earlier about women graduating more from university, that we are starting to see that trickle effect up. And I even hear from the trades guys sometimes where they're like, I gotta leave, I gotta pick my kids up at kindergarten or daycare. So I'm optimistic about that, that the gender roles are switching a little bit. I think if you're an entrepreneur, you always struggle with work-life balance. If you have a construction job with the provincial government, you might work 9 to 5. You know, so and I don't think that has anything to do with construction. I think it's kind of right across industry where work expectations are extremely high in most jobs now, and that can affect both the family life of women and men. And being an entrepreneur just means, like Stephanie said, that there's always a bunch of emails you haven't answered. There's one more thing that you wanted to do, and you spend a lot of time working in the business, and then you have to take that kind of after-hour work. I find Sunday mornings is a really good time for me to work on the business because I don't have anybody calling me asking me for something. So I think that it is a challenge across all industries. I think private and public sector, there's just more and more expected of the workforce in what they do as part of their job.
I think that's I'm really glad to hear you guys agreeing with me, because I tried to start out really right at my comments at the start with a hopeful note, because I think there are hopeful trends. I think there has been some cultural shift. You know, certainly 50 years ago, the idea of a tradesman leaving the site to go pick up kids would have been, you know, he wouldn't have been able to come back to the site. So there's definitely been a change there. What about on your crew, Stephanie? Are the guys helping out at home? Be honest.
No, no, not in my particular scenario. But one thing I have noticed is when I show up on site, I'm no longer I'm no longer the default designer. Okay, so in the past, I show up and they would automatically think, oh, you must be the designer or the homeowner. Like, no, I'm neither. I'm actually the contractor. And I don't get met with that as much anymore. And I have a nickname on site. I'm the constructor lady. And I think the guys have been so respectful and welcoming to have you know, a female on the job. I really have been received by the trades. And in fact, you know, they'll apologize if they catch themselves swearing in front of me. It's, you know, nice.
Yeah, well, there you go. Eh? Mark, to Stephanie's point about assumptions, what kind of assumptions do the guys in the trade tend to make that might be, you know, something that a woman just has to overcome before she can go forward?
Well, I guess my experience goes back a few decades to when I was working on a site. So I'd like to think the assumptions are different these days. But back then, you stepped onto the site, you were a novelty to some, you were, you know, something that ought not to be there to others. You know, some were openly hostile. I'd like to think that isn't the case today, that there are, even though there's not a critical mass on construction sites, that there's more open respect, even if some think that women ought not to be there. But I do still think we have a ways to go for getting rid of the that bias that thinks that construction is where men do work, and you know, women can do it equally well.
Mm-hmm. Work in progress for sure.
Mm-hmm.
One thing, well, I think part of the work in progress, and our next panel, I think, is gonna dive more into it. But you know, you're an engineer. You've actually touched on what got you interested in engineering in the first place. It was kind of your background and the way what was going on around your home was connected to those kinds of things. Tell us a bit about that, and just your comments on what is needed for young women to feel an attraction and an interest in the career.
Yeah, and I'm really bad at writing. I have a little bit of dyslexia, and so math was easy for me. There's 9 engineers in my direct family, so it was sort of just like, that's what we did. My first niece will break that cycle. Everyone else has become an engineer. So so for me, it was a pretty easy decision, but I didn't like school. For all of those gals that are out there in engineering or other sciences in school, or even trades, I really disliked school a lot, and I almost didn't finish my engineering degree. I had finished my 3rd year of 4, and I thought, I just don't like this. And I was accepted to another program, and then I thought, oh, it's 1 more year, I'll finish it. And I've been super happy that I finished it, because I actually love the work. I didn't like the schooling. I thought the school was, and my profs just stood there with their back to you and wrote on the board. And I would hope that engineering and other trades and science programs are much more applied and participatory than when I went through school. And I can certainly reflect Mark's experience on the job sites. One of my first jobs was a project manager for condo construction in the 80s in Toronto, and the site supervisor used to hide me in the basement when the owners came to site, because I was just you know, an abhorring insult to their job that there was a woman there having anything to say about whatever happened. And was actually, he would come and say, you know, the bosses are coming, we got to hide you in the basement. So so I think it's changed a lot, because I'm still on job sites a lot, and I agree that there's still a long way to go, but it's not nearly what it was 35 years ago. It's much better. And the other thing for me is that, you know, we learn all these technical things in school, and it can be really dry and uninteresting. And when you get out in the field, like I always say to people, I love building things. It's like a giant complex craft project, you know, and I always liked crafts when I was a kid. I liked making things. And when you go out and you make something, you see it happen, and you know, in front of you, and you create something very concrete that you can really appreciate your work and learn from that in a concrete way, what worked, what didn't work, from a design and construction practice. So So that's why I really love it, because it's just a way to actually contribute to build quality buildings for people to live in, but the process of creating that is really enjoyable to me.
You know, and that's it's a really great point, because it goes for men too. A lot of the guys that are the best in construction didn't like school very much when they were there, and it's definitely you know, so I think that's a neat tip for well, we've got some educators listening in today, that you know, that hands-on interactive element is important for engaging men and women, you know, and I think that's a big tip. Stephanie, you went to business school, like you say, you really weren't in the construction side of thing, and then you had to make that transition to join this industry. What to you did you see? Was it just mostly sort of, well, I guess you'd seen your father's business, so it wasn't alien to you. But did it seem like a big culture shift to go from sort of one sector of the economy to another one?
No, it didn't, because at the crux of it, it's still business.
Yeah.
And business is business, whether you're, selling widgets or building a house, it's still, that's at the core of what you're doing. So for me especially, and I always kind of joke about this with my brother, is the hardest part about our job is actually client management. Building house is secondary. That's the easy part. Managing clients and their expectations. When you're building a custom home for a family, this is the single most important investment that they're likely going to make for their, entire life. So expectations are high, pressures are high. With what has happened with the lumber prices, it threw another wrench in the whole equation. So it's definitely dynamic, and managing homeowners as clients is an equally challenging part of the job.
Yeah, definitely. You can take sets of skills from one area to the other without really any without a lot of change there. And
Yes.
I would think having a business background would be pretty welcome in a lot of contracting companies, because sometimes that's the weak end of the equation.
Absolutely. I think it has helped us tremendously. And I'm pro, education in any form. You can always build on it. You need obviously some experience too, but it's definitely something that I've leaned on, and I think has definitely helped us grow and succeed as a builder.
Yep, I got a couple of questions coming in. Got a good one here. How to encourage other countries where they adopt man-dominated idea and work. So you think about, you guys have seen the transition. Mark, you were talking about it. You've seen the change. Natalie was talking about it. You've seen the change from where you had to hide in the basement, to now possibly things being much better. We've executed some portion of that in this country, but around the world, obviously these things can be pretty different. Can you? And this is a huge question, Mark, and I'm totally putting you on the spot. But I mean, can you think of any single thing that moved the needle in our societies that hopefully could happen in other places? What needs to happen to really start that transition to accept women as equals in male-dominated industries? Huge. I'm sorry. I know you probably need a sociology degree to answer it, but.
I think there's a couple of things. Economically, I think where countries have brought women into the workforce, especially if they brought them into these male-dominated areas of the workforce, that they see what that does for their economy. On the cultural side, that's going to be a tougher thing. It's rooted in some places. It's rooted in centuries of behavior, and that's just not going to change overnight. But you look at what happened in this country in the 70s, and I benefited from that. You come out of school, you enter the workforce, more women were entering the workforce, things were changing. They haven't changed enough. And you know, because obviously we're still out there trying to get women to enter this industry, but that made a change, a progressive change socially, culturally, and economically for this country to get women into the workforce. And I would hope that viewing that would help other countries see how important it is.
Yeah, I remember a favorite writer of mine by the name of Christopher Hitchens was being interviewed, and somebody asked him what the single greatest foreign policy, if he could only do one thing in foreign policy, what would he do? And he said, educate women all over the world. And I, you know, it was a surprising answer to me, and I went away and thought about it, and I went, you know what, he's probably right. I mean, because that would, you know, that would change everything in a lot of places. So thanks to that question, that came in from Shwan Mustafa, if I'm not getting that name wrong. So let's keep moving on here a little bit. Go around the corner. We'll start with Natalie, because I think she's next on my little rotation here. I'm looking at my screen and going from one box to the next. We've got what, Natalie, would you say is the secret of your success in the construction industry?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is a can-do attitude, and but education and building knowledge, knowing what you're talking about, so you have credibility is a really important part. I take an attitude that I can learn something new every day. You know, there's lots of tradespeople that have been around a long time, and they have ways to do things that you know, we come up with ways to build assemblies that are different to make a passive house. But then I collect ideas all the time from the site, listen to the tradespeople on the site on where they bring their knowledge. And the other thing that I think is actually a really good fit for women is that construction is more successful if it's collaborative. And you know, the idea of problem solving together and finding the best solution, and the collaborative approach, I think, is sort of inherent in how I work, and I think it makes a big difference, because I'm not going to the site with a big stick, you know, telling people what to do. I'm there to solve problems as a team, and I think that that's really important for moving the meter on how we're perceived as women on the site, because we do have a shorter leash than a guy coming on site and just barking out orders. But also I think it just gets better solutions to be collaborative. And I think women are more naturally collaborative and maybe naturally better communicators, or have developed better communication skills. And we all know when it comes to construction, there's a million things that have to be communicated, and communication skills and collaboration skills are as important as technical skills in my mind.
Stephanie, same question. What's done it for you?
I guess, you know what, it really is this attitude of not giving up, accepting that you may not have all the answers, but, you know, people that we work with are actually very collaborative, to you know, repeat what Natalie's saying. And you would be surprised how willing people are to share in their knowledge and help. So if you kind of set egos aside and just open yourself up to, you know, being present and being the best contributor that you can and learning from other people, then, you know, that will typically yield the best results.
For sure. Sorry, we've got the questions are starting to pour in here, so I'm having to divide my attention. And as a man, I find that almost impossible. So that's, you know how it is. Marg, same question to you. Secret to your success.
What I find interesting, Patrick, is that we're all very similar in the fact that I've always been told I have a can-do attitude, and that's what's moved me along. When I landed on a construction site as a 20-year-old, I saw all these trades that knew so much about their trade, and my curiosity, my desire to learn, opened the door to my being there, and being accepted by more than I probably would have been if I'd come out with this attitude that I'm an engineer, I know all. And so those two things, and a sense of humor, maybe a sense of humor sometime when it was more out of discomfort than true humor. All of those things kind of helped in the early days. Later on, I think it was persistence, learning, hard work, communication skills, and I'd like to think collaboration. All of those things that have been mentioned were very important in my career.
Well, we got to get to some of these questions coming in here, because we're gonna run out of time. We're down to our last 15 minutes, and we've got some great ones. One here, well, Colleen Paris directs this at me, but we're all going to take a crack at it. The question is how to get men involved in the discussion, and how to get and there's been a couple of questions here along the same line of involving men in advancing women, and so it's not all women doing everything all by themselves, and basically overcoming barriers instead of getting assistance. I mean, they asked me, from my perspective, I was raised by a very strong, intelligent woman who talked about feminism around the house all the time back in the 70s and the 80s, and her mother, even before her, was had fairly sharp elbows by that generation's standards, let me tell you, and so there was an example there. So I guess I felt like I understood some of this stuff right from the get-go, and it goes back to the education point about if women know their rights and know how they should be treated, and know the opportunities that they should have, and the barriers, they're going to pass that on, and there's that's the knowledge, it's that those who know the good do the good, as Aristotle said, and so that's kind of that to me is sort of the root of it. I guess Natalie, question to you. What do you think is the key to getting men sort of on board with this project?
Yeah, and when I got out of engineering school, most of my female colleagues got involved in really advocating for the development of females in the industry, and they're sort of angry with me for not participating. And I lived in Cape Breton, very traditional culture, and when I went to the first engineering society gathering, the entire room stopped talking and turned and said, what's this girl doing here? And then fortunately someone said, well, she's Walter's daughter, so that was okay, because they all knew my dad. So so we had a long way to go, and my answer to my friends was, some of these old guys just have to die. Like, we just have to wait till culture changes. And now I really believe in the power of incentives, and I see that in my own in our own firm, where provinces that have incentives that motivate higher efficiency construction, contractors just jump right on board if they can add to their bottom line. And so for me, I think incentives can be used the same way to help educate women in sciences and trades, and also to incentivize employees, companies to take on women. I think if there was really good incentives in that area, we would see a lot of changes really quickly. We used to incentivize nurses to go into nursing because we didn't have enough nurses, right? So it works from my experience.
Yeah, they got that big. Yeah, I remember that big surge in nurses in the 90s. They were, that was something else. Stephanie, your dad, your brother were both mentors. Why, in your view, didn't they have old school views about whether or not you should be in the industry?
I think that maybe has something to do with my father being an Italian immigrant who was a ballroom dancer and a vegetarian. So already he didn't fit any traditional stereotypes. So why should his daughter? And again, I think for, my children, the best that I can do is be a role model and show them that there are women in construction. It's not enough just to say it, but to be it and live your life that way. I think it's important to have an identity of your own outside of the home. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You can do both. Obviously, it's hard, but it's doable and it's extremely rewarding.
Men who are not stuck in the old formal ways of doing things. That's a great answer to that question, I think. Here's one. How do you talk from Reza Chernoff? How do you talk to your employer about not feeling comfortable as a woman in the business? Marg, have you ever encountered a situation where you or someone you know had to have very difficult conversations with the guys to straighten things out?
Absolutely. Over the years, some more difficult than others. And when I was younger, some that I would have loved to have had an advocate, somebody in the company, in the workforce, around me to be able to go to for, how do I do this? I think it's one of the reasons I actually joined. There was a group in Toronto when I was working back there. It was National Association of Women in Construction. It wasn't that there were other women on site at the time, but there were other women in the industry. And, how do you deal with these things? But as I think today, there are resources out there. So when I hear of women, recounting things that are happening, I can point them in a direction where they can go and they can speak to someone, get advice. But there's still difficult conversations to have, and learning how to have those difficult conversations, I think, is an important skill set, and especially for women to, how do you have the difficult conversations? How do you bring up the fact that when you say that you make me feel uncomfortable is not an easy conversation to have with anyone, let alone when you're the only woman in a work environment. So yeah, I think it's we've got a ways to go, but it's certainly come a long way from when women were totally isolated out there with no resources to find help.
That notion of advocacy and having the understanding that there's some support in the organization has got to be really key. Natalie, what in your opinion, how does a company communicate to its workers that coming forward about being uncomfortable about anything as a woman is accepted, is that you're going to get the support? How does that take place? What needs to be in place in order for that to be happening?
Yeah, it's really tough. I think and it's still tough because most men just can't see the challenges that we sometimes face. And I think there's kind of two things. There's kind of there's lots of problems on the construction sites that are with people that don't work for your company, right? They're a sub-trade or they're a supplier where comments can be made. So going to your company about that, it can be really tough because sometimes you don't even know who that person is. So I think there's kind of two levels. On that level, I kind of adopt what I learned in engineering school, which is a pretty serious smackdown with lots of swear words in it. So from the company perspective, just having courage, and again, not apologizing for your feelings or your position, but to stand up and say, I expect to be treated with respect and fairly and equally from that perspective. And I see a lot more companies, this Sunflower Court project that we're working on, there's 8 women on the project team and 3 men. And the contractor the builder who's one of the guys, went to the group and said, who can I hire as a female project manager for this job? I want to have a female project manager for this job. So we're starting to and I have builders that are want to hire equal women and men carpenters, small residential builders. So, and they're very interested in the conversations around equality, but it's not the norm. It's kind of the exception, but it's just, again, being willing to have the courageous conversations.
Stephanie, you ever have to really lay into somebody?
No, but but I will share a funny story. So one of my first job sites that I was on, I show up and I had one of the head bricklayer, he handed me $20 and asked me to go get coffees for everybody. And yeah, I was a little in shock. And then my brother, he steps in and he says, she's the one who writes your checks, so you better rethink that. And that's where I actually got the nickname Constructor Lady. So it just took that one little incident. I didn't get offended. I laughed it off. I have a funny story to tell. And, and they will probably think twice before they ask anybody to go fetch them coffee next time.
Gotta be worthy.
And Patrick, I think it's a great sign, right? Like Stephanie's a lot younger than I am, and she doesn't have those same stories. So it is a sign that it is changing.
It is changing, yes.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good stuff. Oh boy, I've got so much I want to get to here, and there's still questions. Let's go to well, we're gonna get to the thing that we definitely have to get to. Marg, what advice would you give a young woman who is thinking about getting into construction in some way? What I think we've heard a lot of it, but I mean, just give us the sort of the one distilled thing if you only had one thing to tell them.
I think the first thing I would say is women do belong in this industry. I think that there are more women out there now, so and companies that are more interested, even if they don't know how to change, how to turn their workplaces into more respectful and inclusive ones, they're interested. And so don't shy away from going into the industry. It is a great place if you're passionate about building, creating, working with people, solving problems, putting out fires, managing things, meeting schedules. I mean, there's some great careers out there for women, and no reason in the world why more women shouldn't be in the industry.
Nicely done, Marg. You answered my two questions that I was concerned about having time to get in all at once. Natalie, same thing to you. Yeah, you know what? You can combine the questions. What's it like in the construction industry? What have you enjoyed about it? What has it been like for you? And what would you tell a young woman who was thinking about it?
Yeah, and very much similar to Marg's answer in a way is that I think that, but I'll add that don't think that the construction industry is just dry technical things. For me, it's just an endless series of solving problems, and I like solving problems. And I think as an engineer, really, that's all you're taught is how to solve problems, and you learn the actual knowledge in the field. So things like project management, lots of multitasking, communication, collaboration, getting to create things. Those are all things that women can excel at. And the other thing I like about it is I'm not attached to a computer and a desk all day. I mean, some days I am, but I also get to go out on site and kick around on the job site. And I really enjoy not having to sit at a computer all day as part of that. So if you like to be physical and be outside and work with other people, then the trades and engineering and other aspects of construction management are really really great jobs. There's lots of flexibility and growth, and many opportunities to be your own boss and be an entrepreneur.
That's a great point. Yeah, there's probably days, Stephanie, when you'd appreciate some dry technical stuff to work on.
Oh yeah. Right up my alley.
All.
So if I were to, round out what I, what I like best about it and my advice for other women, I believe that this construction industry is going to be one of the few that are not replaced by technology. We will use technology to enhance, maybe techniques, but the actual construction itself, it's a long ways away before any of these trades get replaced by robots. So I love knowing that that's not in our imminent future to be replaced by robots. And for women that are looking forward to getting into this industry, if reach out to somebody that you may want to look up to as a mentor. You'd be surprised if you approach somebody and ask them their willingness to help you out. I'm available if somebody ever wanted to just, ask me some questions, send me an email, chat over coffee when we can go to coffee shops again. I'm more than willing to help out a fellow female in construction.
That is a great thing to end on. As you can see, the magical slide screen has popped up telling me that I am completely out of time. We could go on with this, but guys, great discussion. Marg Latham, Stephanie Rhoda, Natalie Leonard, thank you so much for joining us today on Women in Construction.
Thank you, Patrick.
Enjoy the rest. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Great session.